right, we're on. Legislative update, candidate filing. Hey, y'all. Get organized here. Okay, let's see here. What do we got? All right. Getting a couple of things in front of me, and I'll get going on this here in just a moment. Let's see. So today we're going to do a legislative update. We're going to talk about candidate filing. We're going to talk about Metrc, potential actions coming up there, and then talk about petition status and a potential audit of OMMA. All right. Let's see here. Okay. Guys, I'll see what I can do to keep an eye on the comments, but I'll probably just get rolling here, cover some ground, and then we'll work on following back up on some of the comments. So, you might see some notifications of replies, and we can keep the conversation going there. So let's see. Start out this morning. Let's talk about legislation. First, everyone that's been calling and making your voices heard one way or another, that's really awesome. Just want to keep it up, and it's important that folks know how you feel. We're coming up on a committee deadline this week. What it is that bills had come out of their House of Origin. They went over to the other chamber, and so they've had committee hearings for the last 2 weeks on a bunch of this stuff, and that wraps up this week, so it's kind of a certain deadline. It's important to keep talking about the things that are important to you, and we have attached the link to the Google Doc that we have. Remember, we've got a doc that's basically got all the bills in it. We just recently shoved all of the bills that are of top concern to the top of the document, so they're easily accessible. As the bills move along, we're continuing to track them in that document. So that's kind of what's going on there. Make sure to check for that link to that public Google Doc, and it's got all of it in there. Go read it for yourself. Don't just take our word for it. We want to make sure it's all there. We encourage everyone to read through it, or at least take a look at some of the positions and consider them and how it might affect you as a consumer or you as a business. And however you land on it, say something. They need to hear from us. Just as always, we just want to keep it civil. So let's see, just run down some of these real quick. Let's see, license fee increases, which is House Bill 2179. It's currently referred to committee. We're looking to see the Senate committee on some of this would be most likely Thursday, and so we're going to see what all comes on the agenda. When the agenda comes out, we'll let folks know. But 2179 is the tiered license fee increase bill. And it's interesting from its origin. The fees had been cut down in half. We still don't see where any of this is necessary, given that bank fees just got slashed. That we've got $2 billion in the bank as a state. They're looking at cutting the state income tax all the way across the board. So it's literally reduce fees, reduce taxes on everyone but us. It's raise fees. So. It's just not good. There's no real justifiable reason for it. So it's not like OMMA needs the money. They've got plenty. They just need to work with what they got. So anyway, 2179. the other thing on that is that Senator Paxton had been an author, and he is now off of the bill. Senator Garvin is now on the bill. So if you're in, especially if you're in Senator Garvin's district, and you have an opinion on this issue, give her a ring and let her know. Let's see. The crypto bill. There have been some amendments to it. I don't know that in our opinion, this is just a non-starter. So it may have been changed, but they need to lay this thing down for the year. And if they want to talk about it more in an interim study, and talk about how this doesn't create a cashless society, and talk about things as maybe like an optional, super optional pilot program. Okay, maybe, but like right now, where it opens way too many doors and would do so many bad things. Let's see. House Bill 3208 is the license moratorium. It is still alive over in the Senate. It would need to be heard this week in the Business, Commerce, and Tourism Committee. And so, we're definitely tracking on that. We just don't see where, we saw in the most recent OMMA reports that the grow licenses, I think, are down another 100. And I think a lot of folks in the industry know that the number of grow licenses is not going to be rising. It's most likely going to continue a downward trend as operations cease for a variety of reasons. We know that dispensaries are fairly limited by leasable space in the real estate market, so that's why we probably don't see a whole lot more. So there really has been some stability and some cap there. And then, processors, I think, are down around 1,600 tops, and so it looks like those numbers may have come down some. So, we just don't see where a moratorium does anything but complicate things unnecessarily. We'll just leave it there. Flour and prepackaging, which is 4287. It's referred to Senate Business, Commerce, and Tourism, the BCT committee. So it's over there. One thing on this is obviously, we've been in opposition to it. We believe that fundamentally, it really doesn't do anything to prevent diversion. There's some contrary, some back and forth opinions on this, and I've been, like everyone else, we're all talking to people about it, and some perspectives I'd share from those conversations are that, if you can still open a 3-ounce bag, which is what it's been, if it has to be prepackaged from the grower or processor, come in 3-ounce bag, but they're saying that, well, you can just open that and then work out of that. Well, that means there was no labor savings for the dispensary by it being done up chain. They're still working out of that. They say, when it said, this will help prevent salting, product coming in that's off the books, goes into the jar, gets sold. Why can't that be done out of a 3-ounce bag? For what folks are, there's going to be a certain segment, I believe, of folks that'll just say, well, okay, we're just not going to do that. And so now you're going to have a loss of revenue to the, legal operators. Also, if, you're worried about, here's a point on this. Folks would suppose that you're reporting what comes in and what goes out. It might be bulk, it might be in Excel, but we enter that data. That data is there. OMMA should be able to, it might be somewhat labor intensive with the system that they have, but they should be able to right now go back and say, well, they bought this much product and they sold this much product. Does that line up? What's prepackaging going to do? I mean, they've got the data. They could go in and run some of these checks and get an idea. So if they're saying the product comes in, we have to prepackage it because product comes in and then it's just salting legal product and then it gets sold. And this probably happens, but here's the thing: is that if it's being then sold above board, if it's being bought below board, sold above board, there's still revenue and taxation collection going on there, and you would have a higher output of sales than what you have, coming in. And yes, I mean, there's going to be markup, there's going to be different things like that, but if you just go by sheer volume alone, there could be, if people are sloppy, then it's there. Point is, the data's there. So I don't see how, this is really, a big improvement. A chunk of weight in is a chunk of weight out. It can be divided. Another thing is that, we look at this from a perspective of how are other businesses treated? And we hear, well, this is a Schedule 1 narcotic. Well, our opinion is that it probably won't be as long as what you might think, and our community and industry should be pushing to get that eliminated, following the national trend, not, rowing upstream. And so, we hear that, and then we look at bars. They say, well, we need pre-packaging to prevent diversion. Well, let's look how a bar operates. Are drinks prepackaged? No, there's mixing by a bartender, not a bud tender, who's actually mixing. And, good bartenders out there are probably diverting. So what is there in place? What do we need? Do we need prepackaged Long Island teas? How about this? How about the distillery makes the Long Island tea and then puts it in a little Capri Sun for you? That's what we're basically talking about here. So, that might be cool since we've got alcohol home delivery. Maybe we need to mandate that on the alcohol home delivery that that was signed into law. Okay, so Capri Sun packs of Long Island teas straight from the distillery. So what does that do for, it doesn't make sense, guys. It's one of those things where it does make sense on certain levels. And I know that there are a lot of folks that would like to see this, but we just don't see where there is a real notable, gain against diversion. Ultimately you're dictating someone's business model. Run yours how you want to run yours, do it the way you want to do it. But, we're really cautious of government establishing business models in this manner. So, yeah, there it is on prepackaging. Probably burned off too much time on that, but let's see. Okay, so here's one, Senate Bill 1261 by Howard of the Senate and Pfeiffer of the House. Now, this is one of a couple that had kind of been under radar. We hadn't talked about a lot, but what it would do is outdoor grows would no longer be okay, so right now, if you've got an outdoor grow and you're out there and someone comes and sprays herbicide on an herbicide-resistant cotton crop and it drifts over onto your property, the insurance company of the aerial sprayer is liable to pay that claim. This bill would eliminate that liability of the aerial sprayers, and it would just be wholly on your insurance as a grower, however you're doing that. So it'd be on you. Now, this is obviously discriminatory. The way that it lays it out is just simply says that crops have to be federally insurable, which is, right now, hemp is, marijuana isn't, and so it's even a discrimination within the exact same type of plant. So it doesn't make sense. I can't help but think that might get challenged at some point in a situation. There would have to be harm, so it would be a situation where someone would have to get sprayed. Aerial sprayer would deny the claim because of this law, and then your insurance company would basically have to go back and fight that insurance company over who was actually going to pay it. So that's what's going on with 1261 in the Senate Bill 1261, and that's so that's out there. It's not like a huge harm thing, but it's just not going the right direction. Doesn't make sense to do it. And then let's see, we've got 1697 by Yeck of the House and more Yeck of the Senate and more of the House the last time we checked. And this is what this would do is it would require growers to have a bond that would pay for the remediation of the property once you were, potentially pay for remediation of the property if you left a mess behind on your grow. Now, the concept, I think, behind this is, and there's another piece of legislation in the House that's similar to this. It actually attaches criminal penalties to abandoning property. But what this one would do is basically require you as a grower to have a bond to help pay for land remediation if you just left it that way. Now, if you're a legit, landowner here in the state and you're out there doing it, not a big chance that you're going to go and, have to remediate your field. I mean, in a lot of ways, a lot of crops, a lot of folks, they're doing it to agricultural scale. They're just tilling it all anyway. If they've got plasticulture, they wrap it up. There's attachments to tractors that do that can be used to just take all that plastic up. Talk about dilapidated greenhouses. Yeah, but how much of that is on legitimate operators versus a situation where we probably need to have some sort of waste and remediation fund to go back and pay for the mess that some of the illegal operators are leaving behind as they bail out. So anyway, this would talk to a couple of insurance folks. They're talking like maybe $300 to $500 every 2 years to have something like this. So it's not like a huge deal, but it is an additional cost. We don't see that it's wholly justified. So again, it's when you look at all of these in total, it's a whole lot of little cuts. So the fewer cuts that we can take across the board establishing this precedent, the better off we are in our estimation. So let's see. That was 1697 by Yeck of the House. Yeck of the Senate and Moore of the House. I'm sorry, Senator Yeck. Darcy Yeck was actually part of the original MMJ working group. So anyway, let's see. 1367 by Paxton in the Senate and Hardin in the House. 1367. Sorry, 1367. This is the one where basically, simply put, if you share a joint, you face additional fines and penalties. This right here is just going completely backwards. What it ultimately does, and there's not a real way to fix this, is that it creates a situation where if you are a patient card holder and under some circumstance you get in trouble for sharing a gummy, sharing a joint, something like that. And we get that this is medicine, but so are eye drops, so is cortisone cream for poison ivy. It's not, we're not talking about frickin' codeine and opioids here, folks, so yeah, folks should be in the rules, but let's remember what we're talking about. And the thing is, what's so horrible about this ultimately is that if you are a patient card holder and you say share a gummy with someone, you get twice the penalties that you do if you are a non-patient card holder. The charges stack. And then if you employ someone as a business who gets caught up in this, say they're, share a gummy with someone on the weekend, they share a gummy with an undercover cop, I don't know, something like that, and, they get popped on this deal, and then you lose your business license. If your employee, even off the clock, gets in trouble, you lose your business license. So, this is not a salvageable bill. So 1367, we just don't need it. We just don't need it. This isn't a business thing. Okay, this is a deal where, consumers are directly targeted with criminal penalty. That is not forward thinking. That is backward acting. We just don't need that one. Okay, let's see. 1704, again by Paxton, Senate Bill 1704. It's basically jacks up fines for businesses that are diverting. $5,000 fine, first offense, $15,000 fine. Second offense, mandatory revocation of license. It also, there's some gray area in there of how this, what employees do off the clock. How does that affect that business? So it's suspect. It's really not needed. OMMA already has it. I don't know if you all have caught what the fine schedule is from the permanent rules that they passed, but OMMA can fine you into non-existence as it is. So, I don't see that this is necessary. Let's see. Then we have 1841, Senate Bill 1841. This is bad. What it would basically require is that for business licenses, if you are a business licensee and and you have a violation with any other regulator that you might have, be it DEQ, be it your local planning commission, be it the local ordinances in your municipality, if you're in violation, they send OMMA a letter, and then OMMA has 30. You then have 30 days to fix whatever the issue is. It could be your grass is too high. It could be the paint's peeling on the side of your building. It could be any random number of things that you're in violation of. And it expands. I mean, we're talking about bringing in, there's a list of multiple agencies in there. So if you're out of bounds on this, you've got 30 days or OMMA pulls your business license. You lose your license. So you could get into a thing with your municipality and, they could sick OMMA on you for high grass. I mean, this is ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. I mean, what about a situation if we were thinking this out some, what if we have a situation where, say, let's say that Department of Environmental Quality, if you have a violation, they may give you 90 days to fix the violation, But if they report this, then OMMA gives you 30 days to do something, or you lose your license over something you normally would have had 90 days to fix. It doesn't say 30 days or defer to whatever the other agency is. If you send in a note that indicates you're clear, then you're clear with us, but you're under probation. I mean, come on, work it a little bit more, and maybe you have something. We still think that's probably a little more too much, but this is, Senate Bill 1219, doesn't need to do. Now, these three bills that I just listed from they've been identified by others. Typically don't do this without like the evidence in hand, but we've got really good legitimate reason to believe that let's see, Senate Bill 1367, Senate Bill 1704, and Senate Bill 1841, all by Paxton. And these are all in the doc. Remember that we have the link up to the document where you can check on this. But all three of these are basically being pushed by the Oklahoma Municipal League. I'm not sure why they want to bomb patients back to the Stone Age, I can see why they want to be able to have their cities pick on you and make your life harder. I can see that. But these three bills are being pushed by them. So those three bills by Paxton, it really wouldn't be a bad idea to call your city councilor and let them know how you feel. Because remember, our municipalities and our municipal leaders decide to be a part of the Oklahoma Municipal League. And so, especially Oklahoma City, Norman, Tulsa, the bigger cities are the ones that are funding Oklahoma Municipal League. So folks in urban areas, you have in this situation, your voice counts extra. Your voice counts extra on this deal. And because your city councilors are the ones that can really apply the pressure here, and let them know, and believe me, the good counselors, if they start hearing from us, and they'll get a hold of their representatives that are around them, their representatives and senators, and say, hey, I'm hearing this, what's the deal? So you might consider that. Oklahoma City, and really any municipality, a lot of them chip in, Muskogee, Ponca City, Ardmore, any of you guys that have got issues with these three bills by Paxton, call up your city councilors. A lot of them just got done with municipal races. Let's find out where they're at, see what they can do. This stuff just isn't necessary. So, there's going to be, it's one of the things we always have to keep in mind on, and this goes on beyond the legislation and the regulatory stuff. The municipalities are constantly operating. And so, it's something to obviously keep an eye on. We've seen a lot of action on this, but just know that's where that's coming from. Okay, so almost to the end of the legislative stuff, and we'll break into the others. Let's see here. The marijuana-shaped gummy bill is still live, but it's a different version. It would require THC to be imprinted on each, edible, which is really it's just not getting us anywhere. We're watching it. It's still alive. It has been modified, but it's been referred over to alcohol, tobacco, and controlled substances. So we might need to go ahead and get and we'll break this up and get it posted. But note which ones are over in ATC. Which ATC committee in the House is going to be. That's where we've got Representatives Marty, Eccles, Fettgetter, a lot of folks that listen to what we, have to say. I think McDougal's in there. McDougal, Kevin, you're author on this deal, and get it. Just don't think that, this would require a burden on businesses. It would require a retooling, and, it's one of the things. Think about this, guys. And Senator Bullard, think about this. If you made all marijuana gummies the same shape, or required that to be imprinted on a, make it shaped like a marijuana leaf. Like, seriously, you just make it cooler for kids. Don't do it. Like it's an unintended consequence. You're like, hey, I got the cool marijuana shaped gummies. Kids, come on, we were all teenagers. Some of us may be a little bit more hella wheels on wheels than others, but, it's just not gonna get a result, and it's gonna just be another burden on businesses. Just yet another cut. So let's keep that in mind. So House Bill 3734 by Fettgetter. This is a temporary licensing bill, and we're not like dead set against this, but this one that we've got the link in there. Y'all should take a read on it yourselves. What it is, it's a provision to provide for temporary licenses, which isn't bad. The way FET did it, it would have basically broken your license payment into two. You'd have $1,000 up front, like a deposit basically, and then $1,500 after you got your license. So if you're denied, you wouldn't have to pay the other $1,500, I don't guess. So that not bad there, not a license fee increase. However, it's still trying to get through Senate committee. And I noticed yesterday that it had an amendment by the Senate author who raised the back end fee to $2,500, which would make it a functional $1,000 license fee increase overall. So I'm pretty sure that Representative Fettgetter is aware, and I think of that. And so we're just going to kind of keep an eye on it. But there are some other provisions. They're going to ask a lot. They're asking to, in the license application process, inherently it does raise the bar, which isn't necessarily all a bad thing. But y'all need to read it for yourselves and take a look at it and see what it says. We can, if there's interest in it, we can come back through and do a breakdown on it. But it's a title off, so it has to go back to the House after the Senate. But it's in Senate committee now. So, okay, so that was basically it on legislative roundup. It's a lot. Again, there's way more bills than that. Some of them are good. A couple of them have passed. We hope that the 280E bill will go somewhere. That is there's a bill that would help businesses on taxes, and that's a good bill. But we've got like one there, and then we've got like 9 that we've got 5 or 6, whatever it is, somewhere in that range that just add cost, add fees. So a little balance there would be nice. So let's move on here. So transitioning out of bills, candidate filing is this week. And so between the 13th and 15th of this week, which is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, everyone who wants on the state ballots this year goes and files for office. And it's a midterm election, so we've got all of our statewides, all of our federal Congress people. We've got 5 of them. We've got all of our statewide elected officials. We've got all of our House, all the House members, half of the Senate, a bunch of county races, a lot of stuff that flies. Like Oklahoma County District Attorney is going to be an open seat. There are a few different people vying for it, and that's one thing that, again, there's a lot of background of myself and other folks involved with the organization is doing a lot of campaigns over the last 15 years. And so, this is basically the opening of campaign season. And so we're watching that. We're going to get the list. We're thinking a couple of things. Let's talk about this. This is something that y'all might think about is, do we, what if we were to create a questionnaire, a survey, and send it out to the candidates to find out where they're at on cannabis issues, what would you want to know? Drop it in a comment. Let us know what you might want to know. Send us a message. We're looking at putting one together and then getting it sent out to all of the candidates and find out where they stand and, throw together a voter guide for everyone just so, we can go as far into, vote records and all that type of stuff. It's a kind of a typical campaign thing that political shops do. So we're going to do that this year and we're going to make it available. So think about what you might want to see on a survey. So all candidates file this week, and the primary election is June 28th. So I want to say this for folks that may or may not be considering running for office. We haven't gone out and organized, and we're not going to organize an effort this cycle to really try to recruit pro-cannabis candidates. It's just not really where we are. We've got so much other work that needs to be done right now to go, because candidate recruitment, here's the thing. If you go out and recruit a candidate, you really kind of have an obligation to support that candidate in a meaningful way. And campaigning is hard. It is not something that you just go, we're just not proponents of going and throwing your name on the ballot and then not doing the work that it really takes. And anyone in our community that's, thinking about doing this, or if you decide to take the plunge, give me a call, give us a holler. For folks that have supported our deal, there's a lot we can do to help support those candidates. And the number one thing is think about it long and hard. Talk to your family. It's not something that you just willy-nilly do. So candidate filings this week. It's open season on campaigns. I'm not discouraging folks from running. I'm just saying if you do it, think about it very seriously. There is a strong likelihood that I may actually file for office. We all, I believe, have a personal prerogative within the districts that we live, that if we are not, satisfied with the leadership that's there, that, we can take steps to change that. And so, that's something that's, that's kind of been floating around. Talked to a lot of folks about it. Not wholly convinced that it's something that I should do at this point, because simply if you campaign, you should campaign to win. And just so everyone knows, anyone that's ever wondered, I'm a registered independent. I'm not, this organization inherently is a nonpartisan organization. Everything's on the merits. We want to talk about the issues. I don't want a partisan slant on anything, because that's not getting a damn thing done. So, anyone that was, wondering about that. But at the end of the day, there's a lot more going on. So let's, candidate filings this week. We will get information out on candidates to you so that you can make, decisions, figure out if you want to support, oppose, what you want to do there. So let's see, let's move on to, Metrc. Obviously, we've got some deadlines that are coming in late May on businesses getting into Metrc. And a lot of folks involved here are very aware that, a lot of the concerns with Metrc were not necessarily decided in the last legal challenge. I mean, that challenge has been left open. has been left open to where issues were not ruled on, so they can be brought back forth, basically. And I know that there are a lot of folks that are kind of looking at what this may look like. A lot of folks are, would be affected by this, especially some of the basically, we're kind of, right now, we may be slipping back into that regulate by social media type of a thing, getting directives from Metrc, getting, things that should be in statute, things that should be in active regulation. So there's some issues with that. So what we talked with some folks, and we see that there is a need for that there is a need to have basically a type of a cooperative structure where folks can get together and potentially pursue or help pursue, be a resource to pursue, potential additional litigation that could be coming on. And so what we've decided to do is we're going to open a legal defense fund. And what this is going to look like is that we are going to, on our website, we're going to create a tab and a page for this. And on that page, we're going to talk more about what it does. Basically, it's a pool of money held in trust that is for the use for legal defense for our community as a whole. And what that could be a number of issues. So the way that I want to do this is we'll establish this fund as its own separate bank account. We're going to establish a Freedom Fund committee because that's what we're going to want to call it, the Freedom Fund. And on that, we'll have 3 to 5 people on the committee, and those people's primary role will be to discuss where these funds may be allocated as needed. It could be, things, it could be on Metrc. It could be on doing things like addressing situations that violate patient rights, anything from DHS to other things that happen with schools. We're not trying to intercede into all of the cases that are out there, and I mean that's a real thing that you have to watch, but there's a lot of times where this fund could be used to go on assist in really bad situations. So we're going to set that up, and we will keep the folks that are on the committee will all be able to have access to the account. We're going to do this transparently. We're going to keep the balance information and all of that stuff available on the page. Minimum monthly reporting, if not practically real time. If there's any change to it, it gets posted. We're big advocates of transparency, and so we want to make sure that we're doing that there as well. So we expect to see a lot more out of the developments on Metrc, and we'll start chiming in on that here and there, kind of breaking down what we think may or may not be able to be done to, continue to try to make this work. I mean, we're not anti-seed to sale. Seed to sale was in State Question 788. We all understand that basic product tracking is something that a lot of companies just do. So, so there's that. And, we just want to make sure it gets done right. We don't have, state-run monopolies, and we don't have a corporation, a for-profit corporation, randomly dictating, what our rules are. Okay, so let's talk about the petitions here for a minute. We're still waiting on a ruling from the court on 818 and 819. As a lot of folks may have caught, 820 was let loose about a week ago, and so we're still waiting on a ruling. 820 should start circulating for signatures, I think, probably by the end of the month. Is quite possible. Haven't seen the date posted yet. Hadn't checked in a few days. So it really makes no sense that 818 and 819 have not been released and 820 has. Again, these two petitions were filed a couple of months in advance. We've been waiting on a ruling for almost 3 months now, 2.5 months now. Ruling on 820 came out in 3 weeks. And the thing is that if the challenges to 818 and 819 hold, it will eliminate 820 in and of itself. So it's really hard to, draw a conclusion here that there's much more of anything other than, judicial activism going on, and they are going to try to hold us off as long as possible and see if they can't keep us off of the ballot entirely this year. So only time will tell. Only time will tell. I believe that the status quo in the state's probably more comfortable with State Question 820 because it is statutory, and the way it enacts the law legislature on the first day would be able to come in and say, okay, we don't like this 90-day enactment. We just did this with medical. It caused a lot of problems, so we're going to, we're going to lock it up and just basically say, okay, we're going to work on this for a couple of years before we actually, get this. So it's kind of you got to vote on it to know what's in it. So there's that on those petitions. We'll keep everyone advised on what's going on there. Last thing is, one of the things that is in the petitions is requiring an audit of OMMA. And we have, seen more and more folks talking about, wanting to see an audit. They had this report from the Legislative Office of Fiscal Transparency that didn't lay out all of the revenue. It really wasn't complete. And so, we're basically 4 years into the deal. And here's the thing is that we do have the ability to gather signatures to require an audit of OMMA. OMMA would have to pay for it. Basically, the way it works is that it's different from a initiative petition like we're doing with the state questions because there's no vote on this. If we go out, pick up the required number of signatures, the state auditor will audit, any given, school board or anything like that. So it's a real quick turnaround time frame. There's no court challenges in between. I mean, unless something that just completely tears the fabric of space and time. So we're getting the details on that. Some folks had asked about it. So we're going to take a look at that, and it may be not a bad thing to do. It's been what it's been for 4 years. There's a lot of questions that we just never have gotten good answers to. So maybe we need to, just as a act of good governance, go ahead and audit the books. So we'll let folks know on that. Anyway, that's about it. I mean, we covered a lot of ground, and we've been going for 40 minutes here. So we'll go back and check comments on some of this stuff. And again, candidate filing starts, so we'll kind of be keeping an eye on that. We should be back on here. We'll just keep the regular feed going with random updates, and we should be back here in a day or two and get a status update after after we hit deadlines and such. So Thursday, Friday, something like that. All right, thank you all for tuning in, and please don't hesitate to like, share, and invite your friends to follow the page. So hope everyone has a great day. If you need anything, hit me up. We do answer messages. Sometimes it take a little time, but I mean, guys, any 2 cents or whatever, we want to hear about it. Thanks.